I sat there, in the cold courtroom of the King County Superior Court in Seattle, my hands tightly gripping the thin white envelope I was holding. My heart pounded, not from rising fear but from an anticipation I had suppressed for far too long. I am Christian Barrett, a 36-year-old software designer living in the endlessly rainy city of Seattle. Today was the day of the divorce hearing between me and my wife, Alyssa Crane, and everything seemed to hang precariously over my head. The courtroom grew more crowded than ever, with whispers spreading everywhere like a chilling wind. I sat alone on one side of the aisle with no one beside me for support, no flashy lawyer and no family standing behind me. Just me and this envelope, which I had meticulously prepared during long sleepless nights. Across from me on the other side of the aisle was Alyssa. At 34 years old, she still retained the beauty I had once loved passionately. With long, glossy black hair, sharp green eyes, and a haughty smile that always made others feel small. As the chief financial officer of Crane Holdings Group, a massive real estate conglomerate built by her father, Alyssa looked like a queen seated on her throne. She sat straight-backed, wearing a form-fitting black dress, a sparkling diamond ring on her finger glinting under the lights, and her gaze swept over me as if looking at a pathetic failure. Beside Alyssa sat the entire Crane family, people I had tried to call family for 9 years but never truly felt warmth from. Edgar Crane, her father, 60 years old and chairman of the conglomerate, occupied the central seat like a true king. He was tall, with carefully groomed silver hair and narrowed eyes full of ambition and unhidden pride. He had always looked down on me from the very first day I stepped into their home. A lowly programmer, he had once said, not directly to me but loud enough for me to hear clearly. Next to Edgar was Valerie Crane, Alyssa's mother, 58 years old and the conglomerate's investment director. She was shrewd and sharp, always viewing me as an unnecessary blemish in their perfect family portrait. She sat there, arms crossed over her chest, lips pressed tightly as if calculating the profits she would gain from this divorce. And then there was Jamir Crane, Alyssa's 30-year-old brother and head of planning for the conglomerate. He was smug, a playboy, and constantly boasted about his luxurious trips or expensive cars. Jamir mocked me whenever we met, calling me poor brother-in-law or the lucky guy who married my sister. Today he sat right next to her, grinning widely and whispering something in Alyssa's ear that made her chuckle softly. There they sat, the entire Crane family with smug smiles clearly etched on their faces as if everything was already in the palm of their hands. Alyssa looked at me with contempt as if silently saying, "You've lost, Christian. You'll walk away with nothing exactly where you belong." I could feel the mockery permeating the air around me, making my blood boil, but I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I just sat quietly, hands clenched around the envelope, waiting for the moment everything would change. The judge struck the gavel and the hearing officially began. Alyssa's lawyer, a high-priced man in a glossy suit with a confident demeanor, stood up, presenting the prenuptial agreement I had signed 9 years earlier. "Mr. Barrett will receive no assets from Mrs. Crane," he declared in a firm, convincing tone. The Crane family nodded in agreement, their triumphant smiles growing even more pronounced. I looked at them, my heart beating faster than ever. This was it. I stood up, my legs slightly trembling but my voice maintaining the necessary calm. "Your Honor, I have a supplemental document I would like to submit." I stepped forward, handed the white envelope to the clerk's table, and returned to my seat. My expression remained composed, as if nothing had happened. But inside, a storm of emotions raged fiercely. Murmurs began spreading throughout the room. Several reporters in the back rows snapped photos continuously, their flashes popping like sudden lightning. I saw the smiles on the Crane family's faces slowly fade, replaced by growing unease. Alyssa frowned and turned to her parents. Edgar leaned forward slightly in his chair while Valerie whispered something to Jamir. The judge opened the envelope and scanned the pages inside. His eyes changed, from initial neutrality to surprise, then growing seriousness. Alyssa's parents looked momentarily flustered, exchanging glances before fixing their eyes on the judge. Edgar gripped the armrest tightly while Valerie bit her lower lip anxiously. The courtroom, already noisy, suddenly fell deathly silent, broken only by the rustling of paper as the judge turned the pages. I sat motionless in my seat, my hands clenched into fists beneath the table. My gaze drifted far away, out the window where Seattle's raindrops pattered endlessly. In my mind, the 9 years of endurance replayed vividly, like an old film, faded yet sharp enough to cause pain. 9 years ago, I was just a young freelance software designer living in a tiny rented apartment on the outskirts of Seattle. My life then was simple to the point of near monotony. Waking early, sitting at the computer writing code, then spending evenings reading or jogging along rain-soaked paths. I didn't have much money, no luxury car or expensive clothes, but I was content with what I had. Freelancing allowed me to pursue my passion, and I always believed that one day my ideas would change the world, even if only a small corner of it. Seattle to me then was the ideal place, its relentless rain-like background music for the solitude of an ambitious young man. Then I met Alyssa Crane at a tech conference sponsored by her father's conglomerate. It was a major event with hundreds of attendees, from experts to wealthy entrepreneurs. I was there to present a small software project I was developing, and Alyssa sat in the front row standing out in the crowd. She wore a simple yet elegant dress, her hair cascading down, her green eyes sparkling with curiosity. As I spoke about my passion for technology, how code could solve real-world problems without needing money or power, she listened intently. After the conference, she approached me, smiling and saying, "You talk about your work like it's love. Not everyone can do that." I was instantly drawn, not to her beauty, but to the sincerity in her eyes. Alyssa said she was tired of her family's calculating business world and was captivated by my simplicity and focus. We talked for hours, forgetting the time, and from there our relationship began to blossom. Our first dates were wonderful. We strolled around Lake Washington, ate ice cream at small shops, and shared our dreams. Alyssa spoke of the pressure from her family, of having to live up to the expectations of a girl born into a real estate empire. I told her about my modest childhood in Tacoma, with parents who were ordinary workers teaching me the value of perseverance. Our relationship grew quickly, like a cool breeze in stifling summer heat. But when Alyssa decided to introduce me to her family, everything began to change. That was the moment I realized love isn't always enough to overcome social barriers. The Crane family mansion was in Bellevue, a place only the wealthy dared dream of. I entered with a bouquet in hand, trying to appear confident, but inside I was as nervous as a student taking an exam. Edgar Crane greeted me with a stiff handshake, his eyes scanning me from head to toe like appraising merchandise. "So what do you do?" he asked coldly. When I replied that I was a freelance programmer, he frowned. "Freelance? Meaning unstable?" Valerie sat there with a thin smile, but her words cut like a knife. "What can a lowly engineer offer my daughter? We're used to people with bigger visions." They vehemently opposed us. Edgar feared I would tarnish the family reputation, an empire he built from nothing, now brimming with pride. Valerie sneered that I was unworthy, that Alyssa needed someone to elevate her, not drag her down. Her family did everything to forbid it, private talks with Alyssa, cutting her spending to pressure her. But the more they did, the more Alyssa believed our love was real, untouched by money or status. She was resolute, even arguing with her parents to defend me. "He loves me for who I am, not my family," she told them. Finally, we decided to marry without the Cranes' blessing. I felt happy, but deep down I knew this was just the start of challenges. Before the wedding, Edgar summoned me to his private office and placed a thick prenuptial agreement in front of me. "Sign it," he said, tone brooking no argument. "If you divorce, you get nothing from our family. Not a penny." I stared at the paper, heart pounding, but signed without hesitation. I believed true love would keep us together forever. To me, it wasn't an issue. I loved Alyssa, not her money. But looking back, that moment was a warning I ignored. The wedding was extravagantly overwhelming, like a royal event. Hundreds of guests, imported flowers, live orchestra, gourmet dishes from famous chefs. Seattle media called it a fairy tale wedding, with articles praising the union of the rich heiress and the commoner. But amid the splendor, I felt profound isolation. My parents, Edward and Linda Barrett, dressed simply, Dad in an old suit, Mom in a homemade dress, looked awkward among the glamour. They were seated at the last table near the service area, as if unimportant guests. I still vividly remember that heartbreaking moment. When Mrs. Barrett, my mother, tried to stand and approach to congratulate her son, a polite but firm server blocked her, whispering, "Ma'am, that area is for VIPs only." My mother blushed and sat back down, embarrassed. Edgar Crane saw it from afar, glanced once, then turned away, not bothering to introduce my parents to any guests. Valerie whispered to a friend nearby, loud enough for others to hear, "They don't fit the atmosphere here at all." A few wealthy guests chuckled, looking at my parents like an out-of-place spectacle at an elite gala. My heart clenched, but I couldn't act. I didn't want to ruin Alyssa's day. On stage, I smiled while reading my thank you speech, voice steady. But my hand gripped the microphone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Glancing down at my parents hunched in the far corner, avoiding everyone's eyes, I swallowed the humiliation. I told myself it was all for the ceremony's sake, for Alyssa's happiness. But deep down, the wound began to bleed, and it would never fully heal. After the wedding, I moved into Alyssa's mansion, a vast home with a pool, gardens, and luxurious rooms I'd never dreamed of. At first, life was peaceful. Mornings waking together, romantic dinners, future plans. Alyssa was still gentle, hugging me and saying we'd prove our love was right. But gradually I realized I never truly earned respect from the Cranes. They treated me like a temporary guest, not family. Edgar kept his distance, belittling my work. "Code? That's child's play," he once said at a family dinner, dripping sarcasm. Valerie made veiled remarks about my lowly background. "Christian, you should learn to dress appropriately for this environment." And Jameer, my brother-in-law, never missed a chance to mock me. "Brother-in-law, what car did you drive today?" "Oh, right, still that old junk," he'd laugh, silencing the table awkwardly. Alyssa initially defended me softly. "Don't mind them, love." But gradually she changed, learning to stay silent when I was insulted, even laughing along to fit in. She saw my patience as weakness, not strength. "You should push back harder," she once said, but I knew it would only worsen things. At every holiday or family gathering, I became the topic for gossip and jokes at the table. They'd talk about rich acquaintances, then turn to me. "And you, Christian, how's your project? Made $1 million yet?" Jameer led the teasing, and the family laughed, except me. I sat there, forcing a smile, swallowing each bite like swallowing stones. Through it all, I stayed silent, unresisting, trying to keep our daughter, Ely, born 2 years into the marriage, in a complete family home. Eli was a beautiful girl with her mother's smile, the only reason I endured. I didn't want her growing up in a broken home, witnessing parents arguing over status. In those years, I worked relentlessly, partnering with a close friend to develop a new tech app, a smart retail management system. It was the only thing making me feel valued in a world constantly reminding me I was nothing. Late nights while the house slept, I sat at the computer coding, dreaming of the day this project would succeed, proving I wasn't the failure they thought. But deep down, I knew the pain was building, and one day, it would explode. After 6 years of marriage, when Ely turned 4, our life began to change, quietly but noticeably. My wife grew increasingly distant, as if an invisible wall was rising between us. She was often away from home, always citing work at Crane Holdings Group, prolonged overseas business trips lasting weeks. At first, I tried to convince myself it was just job pressure. She was the CFO, dealing with major deals and important meetings. But gradually, her absences became routine, and I felt the distance more acutely than ever. Mornings, I woke alone, brewed coffee for myself, and stared at the untouched side of the bed, Ely, our 4-year-old daughter, often asked, "Where's Mommy, Daddy?" I'd smile and say Mommy was busy but would be home soon. Family dinners grew rare, from cozy evenings filled with laughter to just Ely and me facing each other across the vast table. Alyssa would call late, voice tired but curt. "I'm at the office late, eat without me." My messages. Simple check-ins like, "Have you eaten?" Or, "How was your day?" Got terse replies, sometimes just fine or busy. I felt like I was talking to a stranger, not the woman I once loved passionately. My heart grew heavy. Lying alone at night, I wondered if our marriage was cracking. But I stayed calm, cared for Ely, took her to school and continued my work, hoping it was temporary. Then one evening, everything changed. I came home after a long day at the startup, tired but cooking dinner for Ely. She was playing with toys in the living room, giggling with her favorite doll. Alyssa had texted she was at a conference in Portland and would be late. I tidied her desk, a habit to help her relax, when I found a dinner receipt for 2 mixed in the papers. The receipt was from a fancy lakeside restaurant, dated the same day she claimed to be in Portland. My heart raced. A chill spread from my chest to my limbs. Why dinner for 2? And why not in Portland? Doubt sprouted like a toxic seed in fertile insecurity. I tried to dismiss it, maybe a business partner, but deep down I knew something was wrong. From then on, I quietly monitored her. Not to play detective, but fear gnawed at me daily. I checked her schedule, tracked via the location-sharing app we'd installed for safety. And then, the painful truth. Alyssa was with a man named Ryan, the personal trainer she'd hired for gym sessions. They frequently entered and exited a lakeside hotel, holding hands, laughing intimately like a couple in love. The first time I witnessed it from afar through my car windshield, my heart shattered. Alyssa, the woman who vowed eternal love, was embracing another man under the hotel's neon glow. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, tears rolling down unnoticed. Why? We had Ely, a home. How could she betray us? Doubt turned to real pain. Our marriage teetered on the edge. Instead of hiding, Alyssa grew brazen, as if she no longer cared to conceal it. Late nights increased. Sometimes she didn't come home, texting briefly, staying at a hotel near the office. I lay awake, listening to the clock tick, wondering where she was, what she was doing with Ryan. I stayed composed for Ely, but the pain eroded me daily. Life became an endless cycle. Work, childcare, maintaining a normal facade. One evening, with Ely asleep, I decided to confront her. I waited in the living room, heart pounding. The door opened. Alyssa entered, weary but defiant, as if anticipating this. She was still beautiful, messy hair, form-fitting dress, but the old gentleness was gone. I asked where she'd been, voice calm to avoid waking Ely. She tossed her bag on the sofa, removed her earrings slowly, and replied coldly, "Stop asking about things that don't concern you." It felt like a slap, but I explained I didn't want to doubt, just understand what was happening to our family. We had Ely. We were once happy. Why this? She turned, smiling contemptuously. "Know your place. Don't try to control me. You have no right." Her words struck like a direct hit, leaving me speechless. She leaned close, whispering mockingly, "You're just a shadow in my world. Time you got used to it." Her warm breath touched my ear, but her words were ice. I stood frozen, world collapsing. She grabbed her bag, walked out without goodbye, the door slamming, echoing in the dark house. I stood numb in the living room, hands shaking, tears falling. That was when I realized our love was dead. Only pain remained. From then, Alyssa cheated openly, no longer hiding. She appeared with Ryan at private parties, elite Seattle gatherings. Rumors spread, friends whispered, "Christian's wife has someone new." I heard it all but stayed silent, continuing my life. Ely innocently asked, "Why doesn't Mommy come home for dinner?" Alyssa brushed it off. "Mommy's busy," or left her with the nanny. Once, when Ely ran to hug her legs joyfully, Alyssa snapped, "Stop it, you're wrinkling my dress," and coldly pried her off. I saw from the kitchen doorway, heart aching. I rushed over, scooped Ely up, held her close, shielding her from her mother's cold gaze. "Daddy's here," I whispered, stroking her hair, eyes filled with unspoken sorrow. Ely cried. I comforted her all night, wondering why Alyssa had changed so much. I began crumbling silently. Once resilient, I was breaking piece by piece. Days, working relentlessly to keep the startup afloat. Nights, devoted father giving Ely all my love, but outside rumors persisted. His wife has another man. I heard, said nothing. Each day was a repeating nightmare. When Ely slept, I sat on the balcony watching Seattle's silent rain, wondering how much longer I could endure. The simmering pain built. I knew it would explode sooner or later. After many such sleepless nights, I decided I had to act. I couldn't just sit there, letting doubt and pain gnaw at me any longer. I needed an explanation to understand why my wife, the woman who once meant everything to me, had changed beyond recognition. And if not from her, then perhaps from her parents, who had witnessed it all from the start. They were family. They had to know something. Or at least, after 9 years of enduring their contempt, they might offer a shred of sympathy, some advice to save this marriage. I drove to the Crane mansion on a rainy afternoon, hands gripping the steering wheel, heart pounding as if about to burst. The familiar road to Bellevue now felt heavy, each turn a reminder of times I'd come here hoping for acceptance. Rain pattered on the windshield, blurring like the confusion in my mind. I told myself, just talk, Christian. They'll understand. Stepping into the vast mansion, a chill enveloped me. Edgar sat in the living room on a luxurious leather chair, eyes cold as ice. He didn't stand to greet me, just glanced once and looked away as if I were an uninvited guest. Valerie sat beside him, arms crossed, leaning back with a contemptuous smile clearly etched on her face. She wore a silk robe, still sharp and powerful as ever, but her eyes dripped with mockery. Jameer wasn't there, fortunately, but his absence didn't ease the atmosphere. I stood, hands slightly trembling, trying to keep my voice steady as I greeted them. "Hello, Mom and Dad," I said softly. They didn't reply, just nodded curtly. My heart sank, but I stepped in, sat opposite them, and poured it all out. I told them everything. From Alyssa's frequent absences, the strange receipts, to seeing her with Ryan firsthand. I didn't accuse or lash out. I just said I wanted to understand why their daughter had changed so much. "I love Alyssa," I said, voice trembling. "I've done everything to keep this family together. But now, I don't know what to do. Can you help me? Just some advice." I looked at them, hoping for a flicker of empathy. A sympathetic glance for granddaughter Ely suffering her mother's coldness. But they exchanged looks, then smirked, a smile that froze my blood. Not joyful, but scornful, as if my story was a trivial joke. Edgar spoke first in a calm tone, like discussing a business deal rather than his daughter's life. "Alyssa's grown up," he said evenly, without emotion. "She has the right to live as she wants. A real man doesn't question where a woman goes. Learn to accept it." His words stabbed my chest. Grown up? Her right? Was he justifying his daughter's betrayal? I sat, mouth dry, searching for a reply, but Valerie cut in, voice commanding, sharp as a blade. "Know your place, Christian. Our family doesn't need a troublemaker like you. Don't complicate things further." She stared, eyes flashing contempt, as if I were a lowly intruder in their elite world. Hearing that, my face drained of color, pale as paper. My heart ached. Disappointment surged, nearly bringing tears. Empathy? Explanation? They not only refused to help, but kicked me while down. But I stayed silent, no retort, no argument. I bowed politely and turned to leave the mansion. Outside, rain still fell, soaking me, but I felt no cold. The inner pain was far colder. Driving home, I wondered, how wrong was I to hope from them? That was when I realized this marriage was beyond saving. No way back. Back home, the now empty mansion, I found Alyssa at her vanity, likely preparing for a party with Ryan or some event. She wore a striking red dress, hair loose, still beautiful and proud. I stood at the door, watching her through the mirror, heart heavy. She glanced at me but said nothing, continuing her eyeliner. I took a deep breath, stepped in, and calmly placed the divorce papers on the vanity. The thin white sheet held all my years of suffering. "Alyssa," I said softly, "we need to talk." The moment she saw the papers, the room exploded like a bomb. She sprang up, hurling her jewelry box to the floor with a crashing echo, eyes blazing with fury. Her face twisted in anger, green eyes now hostile. "What is this?" she snarled, pointing at the document. I stood still, trying to stay calm, but my heart raced wildly. She stepped close, so near I smelled her familiar perfume, voice shaking with rage. "You think you can just walk away? Who do you think you are to do this?" Her words pricked like needles, but I didn't respond, just gazed at her long, searching for traces of the woman I once loved. She laughed, a defiant, echoing cackle like a demon's. Not joyful, but mocking, as if I were a joke to her. "Go ahead if you're so great," she said, voice rising with sarcasm. "But remember, when you leave, you'll have nothing. No money, no status, no home, no child. You'll go back where you belong, a poor, useless nobody." Her words were the final blow, shattering what remained in my heart. Nothing? No child? She was threatening to take Ely, strip everything I'd built just to prove I was nothing. I stood speechless as she turned and stormed out, high heels pounding the wooden floor. The door slammed, leaving me alone in the dark room, feeling my life collapse in that instant. I slumped into a chair, hands shaking as I held the divorce papers, tears falling uncontrollably. 9 years of endurance, love, sacrifice ended in those cruel words. I thought of Ely sleeping in the next room and wondered if I'd really lose her. Fear surged like an approaching storm. But deep down, part of me grew clearer. I couldn't let them take everything. I had to fight, not with words, but actions. That was the night I decided they wouldn't win anymore. After that tense evening, I couldn't stay in the mansion another second. What was once a home had become a prison filled with painful memories. I packed in the dark, taking only a few old clothes, my laptop containing all my work and some of Ely's favorite toys. Ely was sleeping soundly, cheeks rosy, smiling in her childish dreams. I kissed her forehead lightly and whispered, "Daddy will protect you," then quietly left. I drove aimlessly through Seattle's rain, heart heavy, unsure where to go. Eventually, I rented a small apartment on the outskirts, much like my old single days. Cramped, simple, with a musty smell and rain pattering on the tin roof. It wasn't a home, just temporary shelter, but at least here I could breathe without the crane's contempt suffocating me. The next morning, I officially filed for divorce at King County Court, citing irreconcilable differences. I awaited the hearing, anxious yet faintly hopeful justice might favor me. While waiting, my life became a string of lonely days. By day, I went to the startup office, working alongside my best friend, Mike, who had been with me from the start. We had poured everything into this project, a smart retail management software using AI to optimize inventory and predict customer demand for small stores. It was my idea from early marriage, coding in the mansion's garage to prove my worth amid the crane's disdain. Mike always encouraged, "You're talented, Chris. Don't let them discourage you." Now, with the marriage crumbling, the project was my only anchor. I threw myself into work, forgetting meals and sleep, coding as if to purge the pain. Ely stayed with me on weekends per temporary agreement. She was the faint light in my darkness. We played in the small apartment, ate takeout pizza, and I told her fairy tales, stories of a boy. Then suddenly everything changed. Our years-long startup project received a buyout offer from a major tech conglomerate. They valued the company at $60 million, a figure beyond my wildest dreams. My heart raced when Mike called, "Chris, we did it. They want to buy and the price is higher than expected." We met the team, discussed all night. Finally, we agreed to sell, This was a life-changing opportunity. With my 45% stake, after taxes and splits, I received about $27 million. The amount exploded in my mind, but I kept silent, telling no one. Not Alyssa, not the Cranes, not even my parents. I moved the money to a separate account, invested part in safe funds, and kept it secret like a trump card. They thought I'd leave penniless? They'd soon learn their mistake. Excitement surged. This wasn't just money, it was proof I stood on my own without them. In the following days, I lived simply in the small apartment, eating frugally, focusing on trial preparation. My lawyer, an old friend, advised, "You need to prove you can stably support Ely." I nodded, but in my mind, the $27 million was a secret weapon. I thought of my parents in Tacoma, their old house, and promised myself to buy them something better when this ended. But for now, patience. Seattle's rain fell endlessly, as if weeping for my losses, but I began feeling stronger. No longer the poor, enduring son-in-law. I was Christian Barrett, a man about to reclaim justice. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after filing, I returned to the old mansion to retrieve remaining belongings. Alyssa agreed via cold text. "Come in, but don't touch my stuff." I drove there, heart tightening at the familiar house, once filled with Ely's laughter, now silent like a tomb. The house was quiet. Alyssa wasn't home, likely with Ryan somewhere. I entered. Her perfume lingered, stirring memories. I packed quickly. A few technical books, winter clothes, and a family photo from Ely's baby days. But then I paused, remembering a book we loved from early dating, a romantic novel about love transcending class which Alyssa used to read aloud during lakeside dates. I searched the bedroom, bookshelves, no luck. Sadness mixed with curiosity. Does she still keep it or throw it away? I guessed she might have taken it to her study. She often worked late there with a large wooden desk and garden view. I hesitated but entered. The door was unlocked. The room was dark, only faint sunset light through curtains. The book lay on the desk, pages open as if just read. I picked it up, flipping through, memories flooded back. Early days when Alyssa smiled gently, saying this book mirrored our love story. My heart ached, but I pushed it aside, intending to take the book and leave immediately. Then inadvertently, my eyes glanced under the desk. The small safe Alyssa used for important documents was slightly ajar. A tiny gap, as if she'd left in a hurry and forgotten to close it. My heart beat faster. Why open? She was always careful with this safe, never sharing the code with me. Curiosity and strange intuition made me pause. I knelt, hands trembling as I fully opened the safe. Inside were thick stacks of documents, bank statements, shell contracts, forged receipts, all clearly stamped with Crane Holdings Group logos. I grabbed a few, scanning under the desk lamp. Huge figures, transfers through Cayman shell companies, fake invoices for tax evasion, clear evidence of large-scale money laundering. My heart pounded audibly. Breathing grew ragged. In that moment, everything became clear. Alyssa wasn't just betraying our marriage, but covering financial crimes for her family. This wasn't personal anymore, it was criminal, involving millions, potentially toppling the Crane empire. I sat on the floor, hands shaking as I flipped more pages, confirming Edgar and Valeri's involvement with their signatures on contracts. Shock paralyzed me for minutes, but clarity returned. This was an opportunity not for revenge, but justice. I took out my phone, carefully photographing every document page by page, ensuring clarity. The flash lit the dark room like lightning, revealing truth. I rearranged everything exactly as found, left the safe slightly ajar, and exited the room. Stepping out of the mansion, the rain had stopped. Weak sunlight broke through. Anger no longer blinded me, only cold clarity of someone about to expose truth. I drove back to the small apartment, mind racing with plans. Contact the lawyer, prepare the file, await the trial. The $27 million from the startup now meant more. I could hire top lawyers, protect Ely, face the Cranes fearlessly. In the days that followed, I lived in a state of suspense mixed with determination. Each morning, waking in the cramped apartment, I brewed bitter black coffee and sat at the computer reviewing the photos from the safe. The numbers, signatures, shell contracts, all irrefutable evidence of Crane Holdings Group's money laundering and tax evasion. I printed them out, organizing into two separate files, a thin one on my personal assets from the startup, proving I wasn't penniless, the thicker one marked with red clips holding the real bombshell. My lawyer, Mr. Thomas, a middle-aged man experienced in complex divorces, shook his head in astonishment. "Christian, are you sure? This isn't just divorce anymore, it's criminal allegations." I nodded firmly. "I'm sure. They've taken too much from me. Now it's time they paid." He agreed to help, and we prepared meticulously, anticipating every Crane reaction. Then the day arrived. The divorce hearing between me and my wife took place at King County Superior Court in Seattle, drawing massive media attention. Reporters swarmed from early morning, flashes popping, crowding the entrance with mics and cameras. This wasn't an ordinary divorce. It was the poor son-in-law versus the Crane Holdings empire, fueled by widespread adultery rumors. I entered the courtroom in a simple but neat suit, holding the two files, heart pounding but outwardly calm. The room was packed, whispers buzzing like a disturbed hive. I sat alone on the plaintiff's side, no one beside me, but that isolation now felt like strength. I needed no one. The Crane family sat in the front row, a solid block of arrogance. Edgar in the center, expensive suit, smug smile clear as he looked at me. Valerie beside him, lips pursed in a thin smile, eyes flicking toward the reporters as if awaiting cameras to capture the loser's defeat. Me. Alyssa next to her mother, beautiful but cold, eyes avoiding mine. Jamir beside her, grinning widely, whispering something that made her nod slightly. Their lawyer, a tall man with a booming voice, stood and presented. He read aloud the prenup I signed 9 years ago, emphasizing each clause. Mr. Barrett receives no assets from Mrs. Crane. The mansion, cars, accounts, all belong to my client. Financial evidence showed everything in Alyssa's or the family company's name. As the final clause was read, Edgar nodded slightly, triumphant smile, convinced it was over. Valerie squeezed his hand, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. They thought I'd lost, penniless, childless, back to square one. Murmurs spread among reporters. I sat still, fists clenched under the table, memories flashing. The wedding where my parents were sidelined, family dinners with Jamir's poor brother-in-law jabs, Alyssa whispering, "You're just a shadow." That pain now fueled cold strength. The judge, an older man with glasses, gavelled, "Now Mr. Barrett's turn." I stood, legs steady, and submitted the thin file to the bench, voice calm, unshaking. "Your Honor, I request review of supplemental financial information. This proves my stable finances." The room fell silent, all eyes on me. Alyssa frowned. Edgar whispered to his lawyer. The judge took the file, scanning under the light. The noisy room, rustling papers, whispers suddenly hushed. His eyes skimmed the first pages, startup sale report, $27 million transfer receipt, then lingered on the details of shares and valuation. A soft chuckle escaped him, breaking the solemnity. Not mocking, but surprised amusement. He looked up, voice echoing, "It seems Mr. Barrett is not only not penniless, he may be wealthier than the Cranes." His words exploded like a bomb. The room erupted in murmurs. Reporters scribbled furiously, flashes non-stop. The Crane bench shifted as if slapped. Edgar half rose, brow deeply furrowed, face flushed with anger and shock. Valerie whipped toward the lawyer, eyes flashing panic, lips white. Alyssa froze, hand gripping her bag strap until knuckles bulged. Jamir's mouth hung open, grin gone, replaced by bewilderment. Whispers rippled like waves. Alyssa turned to her parents, face rigid, eyes wide in shock. Press noted frantically, lenses swinging to me, flashes blinding. I stood composed, bowing slightly, voice steady. "Your Honor, I seek no Crane assets. I only request confirmation of divorce and custody of my daughter, Eli." His words amplified the chaos. "They thought I'd beg? No, I was rejecting them, their empire once used to crush me. But that was just the start. I inhaled deeply and submitted the second, thicker file, red-clipped prominently. "And Your Honor," I said evenly, "I have further information on the defendant's finances that may impact the case." The judge took it, flipping the first pages. Safe photos, laundering statements, shell contracts. His face immediately serious, surprise turning grave. He skimmed lines, eyes narrowing, then declared firmly, "Based on this, the court suspends civil proceedings immediately. The entire file will be forwarded to the U.S. Attorney's Office for investigation into fraud and money laundering by Crane Holdings Group." His announcement struck like thunder. The room descended into chaos, shouts, chairs scraping, reporters surging. Edgar paled, leaping up in protest, voice shaking. "This is forged. Slander. We'll countersue." But court staff rushed over, urging him down, hand on his shoulder for calm. Valerie trembled uncontrollably, hand over mouth, eyes wide in panic. Alyssa bowed her head, hair hiding her face, shoulders shaking as if crying. Jameer sat frozen, face ashen. I stood motionless, eyes not hateful, just coldly composed, heart pounding but not from fear, relief. As the clerk read the final decision, divorce temporarily granted, criminal probe launched, the press exploded. Reporters bolted out, hot news. Crane divorce turns criminal. Crane Holdings CEO under financial probe. Headlines spread instantly online, phones buzzing nonstop. I stood watching the Cranes leave in disarray, Edgar supported by his lawyer, Valerie weeping silently, Alyssa avoiding my gaze. Leaving court, I walked slowly through the throng of reporters, flashes popping, questions barrage. "Mr. Barrett, how do you feel?" "Is this revenge?" I said nothing, just smiled faintly, feeling for the first time in years. Justice on my side, no further words needed. Just one day after that divorce hearing, everything exploded like a time bomb I had set. Early morning, while warming milk for Ely in the small apartment, my phone buzzed nonstop with messages from friends and the press. The FBI and IRS simultaneously executed search warrants at Crane Holdings Group's headquarters in downtown Seattle. I turned on the TV. Dozens of agents in black jackets with badges stormed the gleaming glass high-rise under morning sun. Employees panicked, papers flying, computers sealed. Edgar Crane, Alyssa's father, was led from his private office, hands cuffed behind his back, yet trying to maintain his chairman's posture, shoulders straight, head high, though his face was paper white. His eyes still forced pride, glancing defiantly at cameras, as if this were a minor misunderstanding. But I knew it was the end. Reporters crowded the gate, shouting, "Mr. Crane, any comment on the money laundering allegations?" He said nothing, stepping into the agent's car, door slamming shut. News erupted across every channel, a flood sweeping Seattle. Headlines screamed, "Crane Empire faces massive money laundering and tax evasion probe" on the Seattle Times front page. From pinnacle to abyss, Crane Holdings raided by FBI after shocking divorce on CNN. Company stock plummeted record low at market open, from $150 to $20 per share, losing over 80% in hours. Partners withdrew funds en masse, canceling contracts. Major California builders sent termination letters. Banks refused further loans. I watched, gripping my coffee mug, heart pounding with suspense and satisfaction. This wasn't revenge, it was justice. I recalled Alyssa's late nights with tense looks, secretive calls she hid. Now clear. She wasn't just cheating, but part of that criminal network. Ely sat nearby, innocently asking, "Daddy, why are people talking about Grandma and Grandpa?" I hugged her, whispering, "Just grown-up stuff, sweetheart. Daddy will explain later." Valerie Crane, Alyssa's mother, was arrested soon after at her Bellevue mansion, the vast home I once visited with futile hopes. TV captured her exiting, hands trembling on her bag, forcing a smile before the throng of reporters. The smile was fragile, masking inner panic, eyes darting, shoulders slightly shaking, clinging to her usual sharpness. "Mrs. Crane, are the tax evasion charges true?" a reporter yelled. She said nothing, entering the police car, dark windows hiding her face. Watching on TV, emotions mixed. She once mocked me as superfluous, whispered about my poor background. Now this shrewd, powerful woman faced prison. Meanwhile, Alyssa was summoned to the FBI office. I didn't witness it, but press detailed. She arrived alone, black coat, face hidden by sunglasses. She sat at the interrogation table for hours, weary, eyes sunken from sleepless nights. Shown the documents, my safe photos with her signatures on shell contracts. She stayed silent long, hands gripping the table edge. Then, voice trembling, she offered full cooperation for leniency. I imagined the scene, heart twinging. Alyssa was once my love, Ely's mother, but now part of this collapse. No glee, just sorrow. Ely asked about Mommy. I explained simply, Mommy's handling things, but she loves you. The child nodded, but sad eyes broke my heart. Anticipation grew for the future. Would Alyssa go to prison? Would Ely lose her mother? The investigation lasted 3 months, links unraveling like falling dominoes. FBI dug into Crane Holdings' finances. Cayman shell companies transferring millions to evade taxes. Ghost investment funds in Luxembourg existing only on paper. Money chains through 4 countries, from US to Switzerland, Cayman back via fake contracts. All bore Edgar and Valerie Crane's signatures or orders. He directed, she legalized flows through sham investments. Daily headlines: FBI uncovers another $50 million laundered through Crane Holdings. Stock kept crashing, employees quit en masse, offices emptied. I followed remotely via news and lawyer calls. Those 3 months were tense waiting for me. I moved Ely in full time, took her to school, cooked, told stories, building normalcy. My parents visited from Tacoma. Mom hugged me crying. Son, you've suffered so much. I told everything except the money. $27 million still secret. I used part to buy a small lakeside house for our future. Ely laughed more, played with me, but sometimes asked, Will Mommy come back, Daddy? I hugged her. Mommy will be okay, but now it's you and me. Excitement built as the criminal trial neared. Press hunted me. I declined interviews. I just want peace for my daughter. The criminal trial unfolded at Seattle Federal Court, drawing international media. The room overflowed with cameras. Edgar sat in the defendant's chair, gray prison suit replacing expensive ones, face gaunt but clinging to pride. Valerie beside him, hair grayer, eyes red. Alyssa sat apart, thinner, avoiding my gaze, though I was in the witness row. The prosecutor presented evidence. Safe documents, Alyssa's testimony, bank witnesses. Edgar got 18 years for money laundering, tax evasion, financial fraud. He bowed his head at sentencing, pride shattered. Valerie received 8 years for aiding and legalizing flows. She sobbed, hand covering her face. Alyssa Crane was sentenced to 2.5 years for storing records, concealing evidence, abetting family financial fraud. At sentencing, she bowed her head, never looking at me, shoulders trembling. I sat still, heart heavy, no triumph, just closure. Soon after, Crane Holdings Group officially declared bankruptcy. All assets, mansion, cars, accounts, frozen and auctioned for restitution. The once proud Seattle brand collapsed quietly, just brief headlines. End of an empire. Jameer, Alyssa's brother, vanished from the city. Rumors said he fled to Europe with remaining funds. I watched from afar, emotions mixed. They tormented me, but now lost everything. Wedding memories flashed. Edgar turning from my parents, Valerie sneering, Alyssa's faint smile. Now they sat in prison, I was free. My divorce finalized alongside the criminal case. Court awarded me Ely's custody, citing my financial stability and Alyssa's irresponsibility. I rejected any Crane financial claims, not a penny. Receiving the final decree, I stood in the court office, staring at the red-stamped white paper, knowing my life had emerged from the Crane shadow. Tears fell, but of relief. I hugged Ely in the hallway. She smiled. Daddy, ice cream? I nodded, stepping into sunlight, feeling true freedom. A year after that trial, I began rebuilding my life from scratch, or at least from the fragments left after the storm. With the capital from the startup sale, $27 million I had kept secret for so long, I founded Barrett Technologies, a small software company specializing in intelligent data management applications for small and medium-sized businesses. Thanks to my practical vision and clean reputation, a man who overcame a major scandal without criminal ties, the company doubled its initial value in the first year. We secured contracts with local retail chains, then expanded statewide in Washington. Revenue soared from hundreds of thousands to millions as our app helped clients cut costs and optimize data. Ely and I lived in a wooden lakeside house north of Seattle, a peaceful place I bought with part of the startup money. Not lavish like the old mansion, just rustic wood, a sloped roof, small garden, and a view of the shimmering lake. Every morning, father and daughter had breakfast in the cozy kitchen. I poured cereal with milk. Ely sat in her high chair, giggling about school. "Daddy, today I drew a lake picture," she'd say excitedly. I'd smile, stroke her hair, then see her off biking to school, the little path by the lake, breeze carrying pine scent. With earnings from Barrett Technologies and remaining startup funds, I bought my parents, Edward and Linda, a comfortable home in Tacoma suburbs. Not large, but cozy, with a small vegetable garden, spacious living room, and modern kitchen. Things they never had in their hard-working lives. I remember the day I showed them. Mom cried, hugging me tight. "Son, how did you do this?" Dad, the quiet man, just patted my shoulder, eyes red. "You've grown up." Every weekend, Ely and I drove to visit. The familiar road through lush forests. We'd dine around the wooden table. Mom's simple roast, Dad's old stories of my Tacoma childhood. River fishing, perseverance lessons. Ely listened raptly, laughing at Grandpa's jokes. I sat there, feeling simple happiness money can't buy. Family laughter, home-cooked smells, proud parental eyes. This new life flowed peacefully, but one autumn afternoon, with golden leaves drifting outside, everything stirred gently. I was in my small office reviewing Barrett Technologies' new projects, an AI retail trend predictor, when the doorbell rang. A white envelope arrived by mail, no stamp, just handwritten outside. From Melissa. My heart raced. A strange excitement surged. Alyssa, my ex-wife, now serving 2.5 years in federal prison. I hadn't contacted her since the trial, only hearing through news she was reforming well. The envelope sat on the desk. Her familiar shaky handwriting stirred memories. Early love letters, dreaming of forever. I hesitated long before opening, hands trembling slightly, wondering, what did she want? Forgiveness? Another threat? Inside was a short letter on thin white paper, handwriting shaky as if tear-stained. She wrote of prison months facing herself, sleepless nights reflecting on mistakes, betraying me and Ely, late regret after losing everything. "Christian, I was wrong," she wrote. "I hope you let me see Ely once just to apologize." Her words stung, not anger but sorrow for someone once loved. The next morning I decided to visit the federal prison, 2 hours drive from Seattle. The long road through golden autumn forests, cool wind heightening my nerves. Would seeing her reopen wounds affect Ely? But I knew I had to face it, not for her, but to close the past. Alyssa entered the visiting room, much thinner than imagined, short hair, gray prison uniform. Her eyes were quiet, no longer the proud woman of old, just someone who knew she'd lost everything. Family, freedom, empire. She sat across the glass, hands clenched, voice trembling. "Christian, thank you for coming." The conversation was quiet, no loud arguments. I said little, just nodded at her apology, voice soft. I was wrong. Pride blinded me to everything. I gently placed a recent photo of Ely beaming by the lake on the table. Alyssa looked, tears rolling, hand trembling as if to hug through glass. "She's grown," she whispered, voice choked. I stood, conveying with my eyes the past was closed, no promise of future meetings, just silent forgiveness. Leaving the prison, I drove home under a clear autumn sky, heart strangely light. Forgiveness wasn't because she deserved it, she caused too much pain, but because Ely and I deserved peace. Holding grudges would trap me in that darkness forever. That afternoon, I picked Ely up from school. She ran into my arms with her little backpack. We stopped by the lake near home, water reflecting the fiery sunset. Ely skipped stones, laughing. "Daddy, look how far the ripples go." I sat beside her, smiling, knowing new life truly began here. No hatred, just freedom and peace. The sun set slowly, lake sparkling, and I whispered to myself, I did it. 2 years have passed since that trial, and my life has changed completely. But not in the noisy or glamorous way I once imagined. It was a quiet transformation, like gentle waves rippling across the lake each morning. I am still Christian Barrett, a man once pushed to the brink of ruin but who rose again on his own 2 feet. One late year afternoon, as autumn leaves turned golden and a cool breeze began to blow, I drove Ely to Tacoma to visit her grandparents. The familiar road no longer felt heavy as before. No endless thoughts of the past, just soft music from the radio and Ely singing along in the back seat. "Daddy, will Grandma and Grandpa make cookies?" she asked, eyes sparkling. I smiled, stroking her hair through the rearview mirror. "Of course, they're waiting for you." Ely is now 6, taller, more lively, and her smile is the remedy that heals every lingering wound in my heart. We drove through autumn forests, leaves falling like golden rain, and I felt true peace. No more anxious waits for trials, no worries about the future. This was the life I fought for. I realized true victory isn't in defeating someone, no matter how deeply they hurt you. During 9 years with the Cranes, I witnessed the power of wealth and influence, how it crushes others, how Edgar used it to scorn my background, how Valeri wielded sharp words to marginalize me. And when everything collapsed, when the Crane Empire crumbled under the weight of their hidden crimes, I felt no glee. Instead, I understood that real victory is retaining your own kindness when betrayed. I once lost everything, or thought I did. Dignity when treated as superfluous, marriage when Alyssa cheated openly, trust when her parents defended her without a word of empathy. Those collapsing nights in the small rented apartment, secretly tracking Alyssa with Ryan, filing for divorce while threatened with losing my child, all like knife cuts to the heart. But standing alone with only work and Ely beside me, I truly grasped the value of perseverance and character. Perseverance was continuing to code for the startup despite scorn leading to the $27 million deal they never knew. Character was choosing silence amid mockery, not retaliating with violence or schemes, but with truth. Submitting the files in court, collapsing the Crane Empire from within. I no longer resent Alyssa. Instead, I feel deep compassion. She was once my love, the beautiful, proud woman I met at the tech conference who insisted on marriage despite family opposition. But she changed, swept into the vortex of money and power, cheating with Ryan, cold to Ely, concealing crimes for her parents. She paid dearly. 2.5 years in prison, losing the empire, losing her daughter. When I visited her in prison, seeing her gaunt face and tears over Ely's photo, I felt no joy, only sorrow for someone who had everything but lost it to pride. I chose forgiveness, not because she deserved it, but for my daughter's peace and my own. Holding grudges would make Ely grow up in darkness, binding me forever to the past. I want to teach Ely something vital, a lesson from those painful years. No one defines you by wealth or lineage. The only thing that makes a person's worth is how they face adversity. I tell her on evenings by the fireplace, Ely on my lap, listening intently. Sweetie, Daddy was once looked down on for not being rich, but I didn't give up. You too. Whatever life brings, hold on to kindness and perseverance. Ely nods, eyes bright. I'll be like you, Daddy. I hug her tight, knowing this lesson will stay with her forever, not from books, but from our father-daughter story. Seattle once meant pressure to me, where the Cranes dominated with their real estate empire, where I felt small. Now it's just the start of a new journey. Barrett Technologies growing, Ely maturing, and me free to pursue passion. In my heart, old wounds have receded like clouds dissolving after rain. I understand that in the end, what remains isn't money or power, things the cranes chased until self-destruction, but dignity and humanity. Dignity was signing the prenup without hesitation, believing in love, enduring humiliation silently to keep a home for Ely, submitting files in court without hatred. Humanity was forgiving Alyssa, empathizing with her weakness, and teaching Ely kindness amid hardship. And that's my life's greatest lesson. When you hold to what's right in the storm, even losing everything, you still have yourself. That storm, from meeting Alyssa to the historic trial, swept away all falsehoods, leaving my dignity intact. I look at the highway back to Seattle, Ely sleeping peacefully on my shoulder, and smile. Life goes on, but now I know how to face it, with perseverance, kindness, and character. That's the legacy I leave for Ely, for Barrett Technologies, and for myself,